my opinion. So but it's not all of an insult to the origin of our gene pool here. I'm going to hit stop, close this. Why don't you turn the lights back on here? Well, let's go back to the blackboard, okay? So what's happening here is that Enki and Enlil then realize they need a fertile lineage of these Takadama, these genetic experiment. And what they do is they put a Cro-Magnon egg inside an Anunnaki female and use an Anunnaki sperm. And this is the bullet in the furnace. This is the moment at which Enki, Ea, disobeys the Orion laws about what you can and cannot do with DNA. This is a crime punishable by death. He's literally putting the bullet in the furnace because he uses his own DNA. He uses his own sperm. Because when the Orion Queen said you could do some genetic experiments here, they very clearly said cross, not branch. X chromosome, Y chromosome. X chromosome could receive a sperm, but Y chromosome couldn't give one because they knew how to fractionate a gene pool. The female could enfold, but if the male gave sperm, then the gene pool would fractionate. So this was the rule. But Enki, Ea, An, they were angry in the Orion Wars because the Syrians were stepped on and ruled with terror by these Orion Queen Mogs, which is where the fear of women came from on this planet. This was a matriarchy originally. Remember, this is a huge old story. We're telling only a tiny piece of the story. So Enki uses his sperm, and that's why he's called Pa, P-T-A-H, from Pa-Tau. The story was that Sarah, Asa-Ra, wife of Ra, the sun god, and Sarah, coming from Uru was a city in Mesopotamia, so the story is not of one person. That story is a story of a family lineage. The Asaru came from Uru, the snake capital, and to Egypt, and Ptah, Enki, fell in love with Sarah, and Ea, Enki, did fall in love with his own genetic experiments, no question. He had his weaknesses too. And so he gave sperm to a Asaru, and in the Cro-Magnon egg, he gave sperm in Ninhursag and Inanna, and the child there was Eve or Isis. And that was the first fertile human female. And so what he had done, this is the bullet in the furnace. The bullet in the furnace that's exciting for you and me is, in Ea's sperm was some of the high-winged ophanic DNA. That was highly psychoactive DNA that the whole Orion Syndicate had no idea how explosive this bullet in the furnace was going to become. So the evolution of that DNA, that memory line, that winged one, can grow up in us, and this is the lineage here. This is what became known as the Disposani in the Holy Blood, Holy Grail series of books. This was, now from here on, now you can pick it up with Lawrence Gardner, who tells only the nice side of the Dracos. Lawrence Gardner is the positive public relations for Alpha Draconis. Okay? And the book specifically is Genesis of the Grail Kings. So here he picks up the story now. Cain, which was the success of the genetic experiment of Adam and Eve, from which comes our word king. The children of Cain were Ea Enki's attempt to fractalize a soul group, make DNA that could go back into the stars. Because Ea Enki, if you read the story right, is basically stuck here. If you read the story in Secret Places of the Lion, he's called Merkaba. Ea Enki is Merk in Secret Places of the Lion, he's Muad'Dib in Dune, and he's Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. And in fact, Luke Skywalker wakes up to find that Dad is half machine. Darth Vader, right? And Muad'Dib in Dune wakes up to find that Dad, Harkonnen, is half machine. Guess what? Dad was half machine, okay? That's the problem here. That's our history. So what happens then is that Ea Enki and his bloodline through Thoth sets up Atlantis, which was called Thule, to try to protect the ensoulment of the bloodline from this lineage here, Enlil, Yahweh, Michael. And this became Amun, from Amun-Ra, which was the name of Yahweh's followers in the early Egypt. And this is why Tutankhamun was forced to take the name Tutankhamun, because his dad Akhenaten had to run for his life in the deserts when he tries to boot the Amun-Ra priests and Leel's followers out of Egypt. And so when Akhenaten runs for his life in the desert from the priests, Amun-Ra priests, whom he tried to boot out of Egypt, he had to change his name to Moshe, which means son of, which was shortened to the word Moses. But the thing is, Moses got away with the money, made the pharaohs very mad. This is the book Copper Scrolls, the origin of the Essenes in the life of Akhenaten. And so when Tutankhamun goes out to the desert to try to save the life of his father, he gets strung up in a tree. And that was one of the beginnings of the Jesus myth. And you can read the academic justification of the fact that there was no evidence for the life of Jesus in the time of Jerusalem at all in the book Out of Egypt and also the book House of the Messiah. So clearly the confusion over the Jesus myth is an intentional confusion right here in the Yahweh lineage, who does not want you to know that all of the royal families of this lineage, which became the flagship of Hebrew, all of the royal families came from the blood of Enki, because only Enki could ensoul DNA. So Abraham, and Sarah had the children, Joseph and Benjamin, the second generation. And the house of Benjamin was the houseland of Magdalene, and the house of Joseph was the house of Tutankhamun. This was Yusuf, actually, which became the house of Tutankhamun, which was later called Jesus. And Tutankhamun's partner, Akhenaten, becomes Magdalene, and you can see the alabaster jars in the cartouche in Egypt. That's all in the books. What it is here is you have a lineage which has taken the view that only obeying the rules about hygiene for DNA can keep the family group intact. Because this group here basically has no skill to ensoul their own DNA. So naturally they would be susceptible to all the additives that actually create sustainable DNA. This group believes in external sources of fire. Okay? So from that point of view, they have no choice but to actually use the only good DNA around, which came from Enki. And Michael became a dragon slayer, literally because Michael was trying to slay the winged Dracos, who was Enki's mother. Okay? And Mikael means from the black hole into God. It has to do with the word for alchemy. It's another story. So the bird tribe is the remnant winged high form of the DNA in Enki. So the return of the bird tribe is literally the story of the return of Enki, which is the title of my new book and the title of Zechariah Sitchin's new book.
So where's the serpents and the birds cross?
The serpents and the birds cross right here, Ebi and Uru. The high form of the serpent DNA, Uru, Kumara, for example, means Draco, dragon, or serpent in South America, Sanat Kumara. And the Ebi is Ibis iberia bird train. The Uru is the evolution of the reptilian brain stem. The mouth of Uru, the mouth of the reptilian brain stem, is called amygdala. A-M-Y, amygdala, which means amygdala. And the shape of the amygdala is a half of an almond. The name of Mandelbrot means almond bread, right? And so the amygdala is the place where the serpent brain dumps the testosterone poisoning into the bird brain. So at that point, if the bird brain can hold the serpent brain in a vice-like grip of a raptor, then the reptilian brainstem can dump its juice into the high bird brain, and the serpent feeds the eagle, and Quetzalcoatl returns. That's the point. That is the point. That's the only point. We have these qualities within us. We have met and encountered the enemy, and it is us, said Pogo, right? Well, we have a conflict. We have a conflict in Israel, and here you have the people that did not know how to ignite their own fire, gathering like a hive mind around the little remnant source of fire that's still there, the Dome of the Rock, etc., Solomon's Temple, were all names for the geometry necessary to ignite fire magnetically, trying to make a hive that could redeem this DNA. Because remember, these fallen interventionist Dracos now, after they shut off the time doors at Montauk in Cunabula and places like that, There was no place for them to go. They're stuck here. So they're stuck here with their own genetic creations. And the sun is about to burp, which means the people who can't time travel without heavy metal are just as bad as a vampire getting toasted in sunlight. Oops. And those are the same reincarnates who put up HAARP to try to create an isolationist cocoon in the solar maxima. They're the same ones who caused the atmosphere on Mars. It's a recurrent attempt to create a fractionation in the fabric of time to isolate those whose DNA cannot get up to speed enough to go into the stars.